Hey Stingrays fans, and welcome to South Carolina Stingrays TV. Joseph Zakrzewski with you, and I'm joined by a very special guest today as the Stingrays at home at the North Charleston Coliseum getting set for contests throughout the month of November. Well, earlier this summer, the Stingrays announced an NHL affiliation and return with the Washington Capitals of the National Hockey League and the Hershey Bears of the American Hockey League, and he was with us a couple of seasons ago, and we're happy to have him back with us this year, an NHL great and one of the all-time greatest Caps goaltenders ever, and Olaf Kolzig. Olaf, welcome back to the Lowcountry.
Oh, I'm happy to be back. Charleston is one of my all-time favorite places.
Now, you have a new role with the Caps. When you first came down here, you were the associate goaltending coach way back when, but now things have morphed. Last season, you were the goaltending coach, and now you're working with player development or professional player development, more of the younger guys coming into the game and getting associated with the professional game. In the first couple interviews, you were anxious to get going in training camp. Now you got a couple of games and some experiences and lunches with some of the younger guys under your belt. Are you enjoying the new role? How's it treating you?
I really am enjoying the new role. I mean, I had to take a step back. I have 3 kids that live down in Florida, and it was a little too tough to be away from them during the hockey season. So I approached management with this role during the summer, and they accepted it. And so for me, it was obviously a new experience, and talked to a few guys that are in similar positions throughout the league, and I spent the better part of training camp in Washington and Hershey, and getting to know the young guys that I'm going to be working with, and for the most part, a great group of guys. There's a couple of them obviously I'm going to have to work with a little bit more than others, but for the most part, they're well brought up by their parents. They're very respectful, and so my role hopefully is to just kind of guide them in the right way at the right time, and make that transition to pro hockey a little easier for them.
As you talk with each player, I'm sure they face pro hockey on a case-by-case basis, but what are some of the common trends you're seeing and what you're trying to help them out with? Because it certainly can span a big spectrum for a lot of young guys coming out of college, coming out of junior hockey, but what's been pretty common for you to shed some light on and to help some of these guys with?
Well, for the guys that come out of junior, they're living with families, so this is the first time that they're on their own. They have to, they've got to pay bills, they've got to do grocery shopping, they got to learn how to do laundry. All these things that are taken care of for you when you're playing junior hockey. The college guys, for the most part, experience that when they're living in dorms, and so for the college guys, it's about adapting to the pro game, the pro schedule. Juniors got more of a pro type schedule, a lot of 3 games and 3 nights, bus rides, whereas college you're just playing weekends and you're usually flying into the city. So for the college guys, it's about how do you obviously training right, getting enough rest during the week, how to prepare for those 3 and 3 nights. After the second game when you're, like tonight, a guy like Caleb Herbert, it's going to be a 3 and 3 for him. Wade Epp is going to be 3 and 3 for him. How can they get their body feeling as good as possible for this third game, and so it's little things like that, tips, nutritional tips, time management. They're going from regimented programs to now they just come to the rink for 2 hours a day and they have the rest of the day off. So how do you handle your off time? And so it's just basically teaching them how to be a pro, to be consistently reliable day in, day out for their teammates and their coaches.
There's no better teacher than experience sometimes, and you have a wealth of experience at all levels of hockey. And when you were inducted into the ECHL Hall of Fame a couple of years back, you dove into some of those early memories of your professional days, being a Capitals prospect and having to go through the ranks and earn your keep before eventually becoming a mainstay in Washington. What are some of the experiences or some of the stories you've been sharing with a lot of these younger guys to kind of help them feel more comfortable and open their eyes up a little bit more and how to adjust their way they approach their on and off ice systems? Well,
for the most part, the guys down here, I try to tell them that Washington isn't trying to screw you guys over by sending you down to the East Coast League. There's a rhyme and a reason why you're down here, and believe me, the team has a plan. It's called development, and I'm probably as good as an example as any because I was a first round pick. I made the Caps out of my first training camp. The next year at that same time, I was down playing for John Brophy in Hampton Roads. So, it's not discouraging to be down here. Use it as a positive. Obviously, Charleston's a great area to play hockey in, not only on the ice with the coaching staff, but off the ice. Enjoy your time down here. Enjoy the city. Make the experience down here something you'll remember. But at the same time, you're going to work on trying to get up to Hershey. And then from there, obviously, work up to get to Washington. So don't come down here pouting and saying, why am I down on the coast? There's a reason you're down here. Make the best of it, and then everything will take care of itself. If you worry about just playing hockey and getting better every day, then everything will take care of itself. People will recognize that. And if it doesn't work out in Washington, there's 29 other teams in the NHL that have scouts, and that they recognize when players are improving and getting better. And there's always contracts available to those guys that show constant improvement.
I know goaltending's your specialty, and it seems to be the Stingrays' specialty too, especially in the Washington Capitals organization. When you look at current examples, you look at a Braden Holtby, or you look at a Philip Grubauer, or even Phoenix Copley, who had a fantastic camp and now playing up in Hershey. So there's a lot of guys currently in the system that at one point were Stingrays that you can lean on and show some of the younger guys, listen, this just happened a couple years ago, and look where he is now.
Exactly. I mean, a guy like Philip Grubauer, arguably 3 years ago, probably shouldn't have had to start out down here in the coast. But we were in it was a numbers game, and he came down here with a great attitude. He really enjoyed his time down here in South Carolina, and had a great season. The next year, arguably should have been in the American League, but we had the lockout, so he was sent to Reading, went down with a great attitude, and again. Because you go down with that right attitude and you realize it's pretty good hockey down here. It's not where it was 30 years ago. It was, you think of the movie Slapshot. This is just really good hockey down here. Yeah. So that's the thing with the goalies, and you can even use that with the rest of the players. You look at the people that have been down here, and for them it's been a great stepping stone, and use it. A guy like Big Mike Kishkovsky had a great year last year in Reading. Arguably should have been in Hershey this year, but we made some big signings up in Washington, and that has a trickle down effect to the American League. So there were two guys that maybe should have been in Washington this year. They end up in Hershey, and so Big Mike, it's a numbers game, has to come down here. And so my job with Big Mike is to get him back on track. He's a little bit frustrated out there at times, and I have to let him know that you need to know that there's going to be injuries up there. And when Troy Mann makes a call down to Spencer and asks, okay, who's your best defenseman, you need to put yourself in a position where Spencer says Big Mike. So you need to be ready every night, even though you're down here. You need to prepare like you're going to be in Hershey tomorrow.
Talking with Capitals professional development coach Olaf Kolzig, an NHL great goaltender. We've been talking a lot about these younger guys trying to make an impression in their first professional games or first few pro games, but earlier today I saw catching up with a goaltender that's seen his fair share of NHL experience and American Hockey League experience in David Leneveu, and it seemed like the message was a little bit of the same in terms of how to approach the pro game, and you guys were swapping some pretty fun stories. So it's not just the younger guys that need it, but maybe some guys that have some veteran experience. Well,
and in a case like with Lenny, it's and I just got to know him today. I just came in the other day, and when you have for a veteran guy that's tasted the NHL game, and he was 6 months removed from backing up in the Stanley Cup Finals, and then to not have a contract in an American League team and to be back down on the coast, it's a lot harder on you mentally than it is for a young guy to get sent down here. I mean, as a young guy, you're obviously this is your start as a pro career, and so you're excited just to get going. Whereas a guy like David, who's had all these experiences and now he's down here, can be a little harder on you mentally, and so there's this different. I guess a different way of talking with a guy like Lenny than it would be a guy like Brandon Anderson, and so I was giving him some, just some advice and hopefully that he can take into his next game and into the rest of the season, and kind of start feeling good about himself again.
And I heard some of your conversation, I've read some of your previous interviews as well, that there's just some things you can't control to your game, no matter what the outcome might be out on the ice. One of the trends that we've seen in the National Hockey League and moving into the American Hockey League, just the advanced stats, the analytics, just the breakdown of a shift per shift, play per play for one player or a group of players. But how does that fit into your development role? Because a lot of these guys are analyzing every step they take.
Yeah, I'm still an old school guy. I'm still not really that into the analytics part of it. I think sometimes you can overanalyze things. I think that's the case with a lot of players. They sometimes overanalyze their game. If they have a meeting with the coach, they sometimes overanalyze what the meeting had to do with. I think at the end of the day, it's just about preparing yourself and trying to improve every practice, trying to improve every shift. It's like watching video sometimes. I mean, depending on the mood of the coach, in one frame, the player could be in position. You move the frame a couple frames forward, and all of a sudden he's out of position. So I don't think the players need to get into the analytics. I think it's more for the GMs and I guess coaches to notice some trends, but I think it's more or less for contract negotiations and things like that.
The Washington Capitals organization celebrating their 40th anniversary season. The Stingrays certainly know what it means to be a mainstay in a community. And just the other night, you were honored as one of the 40 all-time greatest players with the Capitals, and they showed up a nice tribute video on the Jumbotron at the Verizon Center. But for you, when you look back, certainly the 40th anniversary season is huge for the organization, but you had some time to really reflect and look at that career and see some of those videos. What emotions or what thoughts come to mind when you get acknowledgement like that?
Well, I mean, it's been... I can't believe it's been 20 plus years I was with the organization, and I mean time just flies by, and watching the video it brought back a lot of good memories. But at the same time, I'm thinking the guys in net, Jimmy Howard and Braden Holtby, are probably watching and going, geez, that's how they used to play net. It was a lot more instinctive and athletic and diving around. It's a little more structured now, but. Obviously, no, it was a great tribute, and obviously honored. Back when I got drafted, I was just excited to maybe get into one NHL game, let alone 18, 19 years. So I was definitely honored and had a great response from the fans.
I had an opportunity to catch up a little bit with forward Caleb Herbert earlier today, and you talked to him a little bit earlier in the interview of just what are some of the things that you've been helping him along as a member of the Caps organization and what people are looking for. And one of the things he talked about was when you approached your game, you had some nutrition tips that you would shed some light on some players. And just a funny video and funny photo that I found out, and it's probably one of the all-time greatest hockey cards, is an old picture of you from a couple years ago, Oli, that of you eating a hot dog with your name etched out and mustard on it. But certainly that wasn't a part of your nutrition routine. We all know that. But it seems like times have changed a little bit when it comes to approaching your game off the ice and what players are putting into their body.
Yeah, no, the hot dogs definitely weren't a part of it. It was more like chicken wings back then. But, no, obviously, the game has evolved to the point where it's a 12-month. Year-round job, and guys need to. Their bodies are. I mean, that's their equipment. They need to have their body finely tuned. Not only for the rigors of the season, but to prevent a lot of injuries, to get over injuries, to not get run down. And nutrition, I mean, has just taken off in the last 10, 15 years. All these supplements and these little. These superfoods, quinoa and kale, and they seem to be
There's a new one every week.
There's a new one every week, and so we work. We have a nutritionist who works with the Caps, and I met with her earlier in training camp and asked her to put together, a shopping list for these guys. So when they go to their grocery stores, it's not chips and salsa and wings and beer. It's here, this is what you need to get, and this is why. And I think a lot of the guys have really grasped it, because again, when you're going from your junior in college, you maybe didn't do a lot of that grocery shopping yourself, so you don't really know what to shop for. Mm-hmm. And this list and the reasons why you eat these foods and I think is really really going to help the players.
Enjoying our conversation with Olaf Kolzig, professional player development coach with the Washington Capitals. And Oli, the Winter Classic just a couple of weeks ago announced that the jerseys would be unveiled. It's in Washington. The Washington Capitals against the Chicago Blackhawks. And what's become a little bit of a staple of the event has been the Alumni Game. Certainly the community is excited, but unfortunately there is not going to be an Alumni Game. If I read correctly, you were actually trying to get yourself in shape to don the pads one more time.
Yeah, I was really disappointed. A couple years ago I had hip resurfacing surgery, and I swore I'd never put the pads on again. I didn't want to put my hip in that any kind of situation. But the last year and a half, while I was up in Washington, I'd skate with the players after pregame skates, and we'd play little shinny games, and my hip just felt fantastic. So once the Caps were awarded the Winter Classic, I really wanted to put the pads on again, and was. I was all ready to put them on once a week and go on the ice with the guys to kind of get ready for it. And then when they made the announcement that they weren't going to have an Alumni Game, I was really disappointed. And I, talking with a few of the guys the other night when I was in D.C. Before I got honored, they were in the same boat. There were a handful of guys that were getting ready. They're actually trying to shed a few pounds to be able to play in the game, and it's really disappointing that it's the first Winter Classic where there's not an Alumni Game. It's too bad.
Well, we have one every single year here at the North Charleston Coliseum, a part of our opening night festivities. So we'd love for you to come out and play in pads if you'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be great. I'd have to find a way to work it out with the guys in Washington Hershey to be able to come down here.
No, there might still be some opportunities. I know there's some Alumni Games that happen for charity work or that happen for the Fan Fest, a lot of summer activities for the Capitals. So the opportunity still exists for you.
No, it is. But the Winter Classic was the big event, and yeah. I was willing to put the pads on and put my hip at risk for that. So for the other Alumni Games, I'd probably just play as a defenseman or a power forward.
Well, and I enjoyed the pictures of some of those games because you were in forward gear or regular defenseman gear, but you still had that famous Godzilla goalie mask on.
I think I put that on for warm-up, yeah, just to let people know who I was.
Well, Oli, now that you've taken a step aside and limited your role, you mentioned at the very beginning of this interview that you wanted to spend more time with your family, and certainly that's been a big priority for you. In fact, one of the big accomplishments in your career, the King Clancy Award coming from the National Hockey League when you were a player, just for the humanitarian efforts that you put in. And with that, one of your sons affected with autism, you created the Carson Kolzig Foundation. Now that you had a little bit of a step aside or a little bit more of a role with your family, have you been able to put more efforts into your foundation and try and grow that more?
Well, I've always been pretty involved with the foundation, regardless of whether I was working or not. And I've got a great staff that's running it, and so we're always in constant contact. And I met with some people the other day. Interesting enough, at the CIA, I did a kind of a mentor speaking program there, and got to talking with a couple people about how we can raise more money for the foundation, and so I'm always just because I put my name on it, it doesn't mean I'm not involved with it. I'm fully vested, and obviously the more that we can get the word out there about autism and educate people on it and try to raise awareness, hopefully at some point in the near future we can I don't know if it can ever be prevented, but at least be able to get these kids, put them in a situation where they can live a more typical life.
Now, I know this has also given you an opportunity to be a dad and to get to spend more time with your kids. And you mentioned in a couple interviews that this was really a big step for them. This is a key part of their life and in terms of their personal development. Have you been enjoying that process and being able to spend some more time at home?
I have. And, last year I took the job in Washington under the assumption I was going to be able to see them a little bit more, and it didn't work out that way. So it was tough. But having been back for the whole summer and then just recently after training camp, it's vital that I'm there. I mean, my girls are, they're going to be 11 and 12, and they're starting to get in that, the age of puberty, and my son is going through that as well, and it's a very important time for them to have their dad around.
And last question for you, sir. Certainly Charleston, South Carolina, one of the premier locations, voted #1 in a travel destination. And we talked about it before the interview, but I noticed in one of your press scrums you had on a nice Kiowa Island golf shirt. So certainly the Lowcountry has had its effect on you. How nice is it for you to be back? I know it's a business trip, but I'm sure you're working in a little bit of fun as well.
Well, it's only business for a couple hours a day, so you've got to fill in the rest of the day somehow. And believe me, Charleston, it's easy to do. It's one of my all-time favorite cities. I actually contemplated a few years ago about maybe moving here, and but no, we put a golf trip together every year, and then that a couple years ago we did Kiowa, and it was just it was a very memorable trip. It was shortly after the PGA, and yeah, I made the mistake of wearing the shirt during the interview. I didn't have. I was supposed to wear some Caps logo stuff, and I forgot, and so I got a little bit of grief from the GM. But it was all good. It was a good I guess Chambers of Commerce moment for Charleston.
Absolutely, and we love the fact you're wearing some Stingrays gear right now.
Yeah, so I learned my lesson. Right? So whatever's behind me, that's what I'm wearing.
That's what you. Any hot spots or any things you look forward to when you know you're coming down to Charleston? You have a favorite place to eat or a location to kick back and relax? I know the beaches are always popular. The restaurants downtown are always popular.
You know what? Coming from I live in St. Pete, so we've got some pretty good beaches down there too. So, from what I remember a couple years ago, I think Hall's Chop House was one of my favorites. I think I'm going to probably head over there tomorrow on our off day and watch a little football. I think it was the Pavilion Hotel with the rooftop. It was pretty nice. A couple other interesting little places I can't quite remember the name of, but I'll get reacquainted with here in the not too distant future.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak with us today, and enjoy the time here in the Lowcountry.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Professional development coach for the Washington Capitals and NHL great goaltender Olaf Kolzig here on South Carolina Stingrays TV.